I have a small favor to ask that takes you literally a few seconds. If you like the first 100 podcasts and the guests that we have invited so far, can you do me a small favor and give us a thumbs up on any podcast platform that you are listening on? It helps the podcast more than you think, because the higher we go on the ranking, the more interesting guests we can invite. Thank you again for your support.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Broadcasting from around the world, you're listening to The First 100, a podcast on how founders acquired their first 100 paying customers. Here's your host, Hadi Radwan.
This podcast is sponsored by All-in-One, the premier fantasy sports site that is on a mission to bring all sports fantasy games under one roof. If you are into football, the Euro 2024 is coming soon. Head to www.allinone.rocks. That's www.allinone.rocks and register for free for the first predictor game. You can create free leagues, invite and compete with your friends, and show your prediction prowess. May the best team win. Good to have you on the show, Miles. How are you doing today?
Adi, thanks for having me, bud. Appreciate it.
I'm very happy that you joined our pod. You have a very interesting startup in the pet world, our true companions these days. Let me just start with a quick introduction for our listeners. Miles Thorson is the co-founder of Odie Pet Insurance, which is a wellness-first and tech-enabled health insurance brand. And you've raised to date $10 million from notable investors like Redbird Capital Partners. Since your successful launch, you have sold more than 25,000 policies. But before we dive into how you got your early customer base, take us back to the founding aha moment. How did you come up with going after this particular line of business?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I was fortunate enough to grow up around the insurance industry. My family has run a platform of specialty insurance businesses ranging from carriers to commercial and even the brokerage side, which is where actually I got my start. So interacting directly with policyholders, oftentimes executives or C-suites of commercial businesses, as well as some personal and high net worth personal clients. And so I've had the good fortune of seeing the industry through the lens of, let's say, each link in the value chain from distribution to the client, up through underwriting, up through how a carrier or even reinsurers look at the space. And actually, I got an internship out of school at a firm at Lloyd's of London. So I got my feet wet on the reinsurance side first, which was great. So I've always had a unique outlook, and I've always looked for opportunities to improve things across the industry, again, whether that's from the underwriting aspect or the distribution side. So a few years ago now, I actually had a client on the brokerage side that was funny enough, their business sourced solutions for some large retailers. So if a specific large box retailer was looking for a new solution in, let's say, in-store pharmacies or something like that, they would use this consulting company to go help them vet the right partners and things like that. And so they approached us saying, hey, we're getting asked a lot about pet insurance. A lot of these big brands are doing more and more in store with not only pet products, but pet services, again, pharmacy side, preventative care, grooming, things like that. And they all viewed insurance as a great way to round out that ecosystem of offerings. And so this client, knowing that we've developed, specialty products in the past, approached us and said, is there something we could build here? And so it was through the context of developing a white labeled program for one of these large box partners that we started looking at the pet insurance space at large. Coincidentally, my wife and I were also looking at insurance at the time for our own two dogs. And so it just was this, I guess, serendipitous kind of happenstance where I was already feeling like there's just not a lot of great pet insurance solutions out there. I didn't feel like the pricing, the user experience, the coverage offering, and even just the distribution strategies were what they could be. And then got approached again by this sort of partnership opportunity. And that's how we started looking at the space. And as I just mentioned, we just really felt there was an opportunity to improve things. Predominantly, we felt the distribution strategies that a lot of these current brands were using was just not the best way to acquire customers, not the most efficient, and that there was actually a sort of a negative impact on the underwriting outcomes as well. And I can get into that more. But yeah, so that's how we started looking at the space.
Amazing story. Thank you for sharing this. There is this dichotomy between How do you select your go-to-marketing strategy? Because you can go direct to the consumer, which we've seen a lot of insurtech who've raised millions of dollars. There's advantages and disadvantages, but you also can go with the approach of the B2C. How did you think about it early on, and how did you land up on B2B2C?
So the very truthful answer is that I guess necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So just coming from a family company background, right? We've never had outside investors. We've always built things ourselves and in a very bootstrapped way. We're big believers in you jump off the cliff and then you figure out how to build the plane. So looking at the landscape, right? Seeing that Trupanion is really the large sort of publicly traded company in our space. They had a stranglehold on distribution through vet clinics and things like that. A lot of these other brands that were coming to the market, they were focused more on digital acquisition through Facebook ads and top of search at Google SEO and things like that. And a lot of these comparison sites were popping up and people were spending a lot of money to show up as the number one pet insurance brand on those sites. And so we just looked at it saying, there's no way we're going to beat Trupanion at their own game. And there's no way we're going to spend the kind of money that some of these other competitors are on acquiring customers. And that actually was the biggest blessing because that actually allowed us to start to not only look at alternative distribution just out of necessity, right? How are we going to acquire customers? But it also started to feed into that underwriting thesis, as I mentioned. Like I said, out of necessity, it became our entire differentiator and go-to-market strategy.
Amazing. Take us back to the first 100. What was your early acquisition strategy?
Yeah.
They could be not scalable, by the way, but you had to do them. And then how did that shift later on as you scaled to thousands and thousands of policies?
Yeah. So to be honest, we built a very basic MVP product in terms of we had gone about the insurance filings and getting the actual insurance product built, reinsurance contracts, carrier contracts, all that sort of boring behind the scenes stuff that unfortunately takes a lot of time and energy. But we got all that done. And then we said, okay, now we need to actually put some systems and some automations around this. So like I said, a very basic MVP allowed us to rate, quote, bind in a sort of online in an automatic fashion. And then we had some very limited behind the scenes automations with policy issuance and policy admin and things like that. Didn't even address claims or anything like that at the time. And we were just processing those manually. But we actually went and acquired a few customers with some organic marketing and organic search, a lot of blog content, a lot of, frankly, just cold email campaigns that we had partnered with some other agencies that we'd worked with in the past, insurance agencies, that is, just basically saying, we're trying to start this product, don't even know if there's a fit, don't even know if there's a demand, but how can we get started? And so that's how we did. We acquired about 100 customers in parallel while we were starting to talk to outside investment firms. And it sounds, to your point, it sounds small and it certainly wasn't scalable, but that was important to show investors that, hey, technically speaking, we can underwrite a policy, we can bind it, issue it, and then service customer service and handle a claim. And so that was the entire, stack of workflow validation that our earliest investors looked at. From there, we started talking to some B2B2C, what I'll call enterprise level partnerships. And that was a bit of a different sales cycle. But those first 100 was everything from calling up cousins to, like I said, some organic search and things like that.
How did that change later? How did you adopt more scalable strategy? Which one worked for you?
Yeah.
Which was what was economical? And how does it look today?
Yeah. Again, the D2C side was never going to be our bread and butter or our core focus, but we used some of those organic efforts, again, just to prove that the systems that we had built in a very basic fashion could do what we said they were, intended to do. From there, then we felt, okay, now we can reasonably go to a somewhat of a B2B2C partner and demonstrate that, again, we can go from bind all the way through a claim and, process payments and all that kind of stuff. So when we started the B2B2C partnership search, it was a similar effort, just at a higher level, right? So our basic email campaigns out to individuals just scaled up to very targeted outreach and in a lot of ways, cold outreach to enterprise level customers. So I did a lot of adding connections on LinkedIn and sending thoughtful, organic, tailored notes to each one of these potential decision makers. I'm not a believer to this day in AI-powered email outreach and things like that. I think any smart executive tends to see right through that. And I just told our story. I said, listen, we come from the specialty insurance space. I think we're doing things a bit differently. I gave my 2 bullet points of here's how everyone else is trying to distribute pet insurance. Frankly, they're trying to cut you out of the business. I want to give you a tool to actually unlock the earning potential of your customer base through this line of business. And so this is how we're going to go about doing it. We're building these systems. Everything's going to be open architecture. We can plug in through APIs and things like that. And eventually we had a large benefits partner distributing pet insurance and other products through the employee benefits channel. And they were working with another brand at the time. And they said, hey, we're looking for something that gives us a bit more flexibility. We like that you guys are a young company, that you're, at the end of the day, the stakeholder that we're going to be talking to if something goes wrong. And we were able to win actually to this date, our largest partnership account right out of the gate, which was a blessing and a challenge all in one, right? Because they had one of the more complex sets of needs. So there's a lot of build as you go.
That's an amazing story. When it comes to insurance, there are products that are price sensitive. There are products that are commoditized, but there are also premium products. So we had a couple of founders from Europe that were running a pet insurance company on the podcast.
Yeah.
And their angle was not only price, but they also had the wellness side, so that they want to probably prolong the longevity of their pets, and they want to reduce the mortality, which is very important from a claims perspective. How did you position yourself? Was it primarily price? Was it a combination? Was it only wellness?
Yeah, listen, with insurance products, especially out of the gate, there's only so much innovation that you can force upon the industry, right? It's at the end of the day, it's still a regulated financial product. And in our case, it's what we call admitted product. So each state has to approve your filings, rates, forms, all that good stuff. That said, we did identify that, again, I'll go back to the distribution angle of a lot of our competitors spending a lot of money trying to acquire their customers through D2C marketing. If you're going to be spending $500, $600, $700, $800 of acquiring a customer, you're going to want to maximize the dollar amount per customer, right? So you're going to be presenting them with a much more higher price point, premium coverage product, and you're going to market yourselves very comprehensive. We felt, especially through the B2B landscape, there was a much more opportunity to actually lower the barrier of entry. I think when even though it's not an expensive line of business compared to home, auto, and life insurance and things like that, but when you start getting to $100 a month for pet insurance, people start to try to do the math in their head of, okay, what kind of claim would I have to make this worthwhile if I have this coverage for 3, 5, 7 years? And so we wanted to remove that internal dialogue and just make it a very easy yes or no decision. So of course, our product has all of those premium features. What we did was we made every single one of them modular, essentially. So instead of pre-bundling them and including them all in a premium plan, we allowed people to select or deselect coverage that fit their needs, right? If you're a brand new person bringing home a puppy for the first time, you're not going to need an unlimited annual reimbursement limit or some of the coverages that are more predicated on aging pets. You want very basic, sort of catastrophic, get you in the door type of coverage. God forbid the puppy jumps off the bed that's too high and fractures a leg. $5,000 later, you want to make sure that you're offsetting that. And that's how we focused on adjusting our rates to be very attractive to younger pets, right? That's who we wanted to be most competitive for. But also the customizability within the product was something that we focused on to allow people to put themselves into a lower entry point if that's what they needed.
What has been the hardest part of building your InsurTech?
That's a very good question. I would say our team from day one has always excelled in product differentiation from an insurance perspective and having a very strong vision, even compared to where we are today, of where we want to take the product. And again, I'm happy to dive into that. But we come from an underwriting background and creating product that we feel is underserved or not being met across the market. We also have a very good strength across sales and distribution. Again, I think myself coming from even just starting as a broker, right? You have to go out and find business. You have to pound the pavement. You have to make uncomfortable phone calls. You have to put yourself out there. And there's a little bit of a scrappiness to getting your book of business started that I think served us well starting Odie. That said, I think from the systems perspective, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably not start a fully automated tech-enabled MGA without that kind of technical lead as maybe part of either the founding team or to bring someone in shortly thereafter the founding of the business. I think things are in a good place now, but we definitely had some fits and starts of diligencing different off-the-shelf vendors or determining when to bring in in-house developers and things like that, that I feel like we probably could have minimized some spend and brought in some tech features to market a bit quicker had we had that technical lead as part of the team earlier on.
Makes a lot of sense, absolutely. What is a principle that you live by that has served you well on your journey?
It sounds corny, but when I was just getting going in the business, a mentor of mine had said, listen, 90% of life is showing up. And I think by that, he meant, again, make the call, show up to the office, go that extra mile, take the meeting. Don't, even if it's, hey, I don't even know what I'm necessarily going to get out of this meeting. Show up, take the meeting, have the conversation, build the relationship, because you never know. And I can actually point directly to a scenario with Odie where, say I met another entrepreneur in the space. We hadn't even thought about building Odie yet. I was just working in our core family business, and he was doing something completely separate of pet insurance at the time. And we got introduced, and on the paper level, there was really nothing for us to do together. But we said, all right, I'm still going to take the meeting, get to know this guy. And we probably we hit it off, and we just kept in touch, kept sharing what each other was up to over a good 18 months, 2 years before I eventually made the phone call saying, hey, I'm going to think about starting this pet insurance MGA. I'd love to get your take on it. That gentleman has since become not only one of our key investors as a very strategic individual, but is a board advisor, has helped us with business development initiatives, systems roadmap, all that kind of stuff. So has now become obviously a very good friend as well. So I think that corny principle has served me well. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you for sharing your story. If you had a magic wand and you want to reverse one business decision, what would that be?
I'll go back to the technical side. We put a lot of trust in some external vendors early on with the business. And I say I didn't stick to my own guns in the sense of I put too much trust in, hey, they're the subject matter experts. I'm going to let them do what they do. And I'm going to focus on the sales, business development, capital raise, all the kind of stuff that I felt was my strong suit. So again, I would just say as a founder, at the end of the day, every decision ends with you. And I would have put myself more in the driver's seat with some of those technical decisions and diligencing of some of those projects and vendors. Again, we've been able to recover, but yeah, I'd say that was been a pain point for the business at that time.
Thank you for sharing your story. One last question. What's next for Odie?
Yeah, so Odie's in an interesting, I'll call it kind of its teenager phase where we're doing well from a premium growth perspective. The demand for pet insurance across the US marketplace certainly has phenomenal tailwinds behind it. I think when we were first raising our seed round, some of the questions we answered were, hey, is this line of business going to be around for the next couple of years? I think that question's well been answered. Some of the folks that the B2B partners that we called, a year ago, they're saying, hey, yeah, pet insurance is interesting. We just don't know how important it is and where to put it on our roadmap. They're now calling back saying, okay, we see the opportunity. How quickly can we spin something up? So that's been great. I think we have a lot of opportunity on the product development side. Again, right now we're still following similar coverage forms, if you will, to what's in the marketplace today. And I just don't see a lot of innovation on that front. So I would love to continue to try and simplify the product, make it something that is a very easy bundle add-on to other lines of business. So if you're renewing your health insurance coverage, if you're purchasing life insurance, if you're renewing your home insurance coverage, I think there should be just a very simple sort of yes or no checkbox. Would you like $5, $10, $15,000 of accident and illness coverage to your pet? And then if you have multiple pets, what does that coverage and price look like? But just remove some of the quote process and have a more standardized, again, simple product that lowers the barrier to entry and removes a lot of the decision making, right, that goes into it today.
Thank you for sharing your story. This was an amazing episode, very helpful. We love what you're doing, Miles. We wish you the best of luck. How can people reach you, and are you hiring?
I'd say as a startup, we're always looking for good talent. So hiring, yes. I'd say on the sales and business development side, we'd love a young, hungry, a BD person to go help build some of these partnerships. Right now, you're looking at and speaking to the entire sales team at Odie. So adding some bandwidth there would be great. But really across any aspect of the company, we're always looking for talented people. So feel free to reach out. Our website is www.getodie.com. We have partnerships, inquiry form, as well as just personal inquiries, again, on the hiring side or whatever the case may be. So that's probably the best place. And we definitely get back to those inquiries promptly.
Thank you for stopping by, Miles, and we wish you the best of luck. Have a great day.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, Hadi.
Thank you so much for listening to the First 100. We hope it inspired you in your journey. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and share it with a friend starting their entrepreneurship journey. Leave us a 5-star review. Your support will help spread our podcast to more viewers.